All right. We're in the home stretch here, almost cocktail hour. So one of the things that Mark mentioned earlier today was the emergence of private equity as buyers. We started to see probably, I'm guessing about 2 years ago, instead of just random check-ins with private equity, a lot of private equity guys saying, let's come in and just walk through various Lumascapes, but seem to center on the marketing technology Lumascape, and obviously because those are SaaS subscription businesses. And so, recently, especially in the last year, we've seen a tremendous number of deals that are private equity deals. And it's not just Marketo and Cision, but Sitecore was bought by EQT, and Dave Wan, if he's here, I know he's on one of the next panels, backer of that business. You have other companies like HGGC buying Celigent and some other assets and putting together some private companies. But it is absolutely a trend that we're seeing in the market. So it's not just the marketing clouds buying marketing assets, but it's private equity as well. And so we wanted to get Kevin and Phil on stage to talk about these dynamics. And so, I think these two companies represent really the headline deals that private equity guys have done recently. So Marketo was recently acquired by Vista for $1.8 billion, and it just happens to be that GTCR, that business is about $1.8 billion of equity deployed, buying Cision, Vocus, Gorkana, PR Newswire, Visible Technologies, and Viral Heat over about a two-year period, 2.5 year period.
Yep.
So anyway. So we're here to talk about the trends and then the specific deals here and kind of what's next. So we're going to start with Phil. So I know when I saw the headline of Vista buying Marketo, to me it was a complete head scratcher for two reasons. One is the multiple. It was a strategic multiple. Absolutely. For the deal. And there were a couple of strategic buyers I thought were going to be the buyers, but they paid up. And then also, traditionally, the private equity guys go after companies with profits, and Marketo was still in investment mode. So what did Vista see in Marketo?
Well, I think Vista saw, I think they're thinking about a new playbook, and a new playbook where their ability to deploy capital can produce a different kind of returns, or at least a return from a different mechanism, and that they can build around a company like Marketo as they call an anchor tenant, a much larger business, a business to scale, and they believe that there's a benefit to get to scale. So, but in simple terms, as they kind of talk to me about it, their basic analysis was, we can buy a company for a 6x forward revenue multiple. We're going to run it for 3 years and grow it at a 30%. We're going to get a scale premium at the end of that, so we can then sell it at a 7x revenue multiple after 3 or 4 years, and that's a 3x path to increase our money. A little detail about execution risk and things, but it's actually a very kind of straightforward model that they really reduce in that simple terms to the revenue growth, and the revenue growth multiple can produce a new kind of PE return.
Huh. Interesting. And Vista is well known for taking their learnings across their entire portfolio, creating their standard operating procedures, and then implementing those in their portfolio companies. Are they running that play with Marketo as well?
They are, although it's the same SOPs for a highly innovative, growth-oriented business in an ultra-competitive market that's moving really fast. And those same kinds of SOPs applied primarily to drive up EBITDA margins and cash flows are in conflict with each other in some central ways. And so it's a great lesson in sort of how human or organizational nature works, is you can have a new playbook, and yet, clearly as I left, I watched a lot of stress over the cost-oriented plays starting to really do battle with the innovation-oriented plays. And that's going to be where this tail gets interesting.
I'd love to hear your views on that. So obviously, if you want to continue to grow at 30%, that means there's still a lot of innovation that has to happen in that business. And so do you think that can actually occur?
I think that's really going to be interesting. The basic, you look at a Marketo.
So do I.
Super innovative space with a lot of investment going into R&D. And all of a sudden, Marketo that was running at essentially, we would have left to our own devices this year, maybe had $5 million of free cash flow. Next year, that company's going to have $50 million of debt service before you do anything else. And so just the need to torque a cost structure in a highly innovative company in that kind of period of time, I think the question is it disruptive to R&D? Is it disruptive to a set of motions that are necessary to continue that kind of innovation? And so I'm going to be watching with a lot of excitement from nearby.
Interesting is the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, I remember talking to Doug Pepper, and he came in very early.
Yep.
And at that time, nobody, I don't think MarTech was a term. And marketing, I remember people talking about, marketing doesn't have budget. And so it sounded like it was actually pretty damn hard to raise money. Obviously came out as a great success. But can you talk a little bit about those early days, as far as like what you had to do to get your business going?
It was stupid hard to raise money. I mean, and I had 2 successful, exits before that and everything else. But and even the person who I would consider to be my mentor in the marketing tech space was actually a VC on Sand Hill at the time, and put his arm around me as I pitched him, and he said, "Phil, if you came in with a data center virtualization project, I'd send you home with a check, but this is the." Dropped the F-bomb, stupidest idea I've ever heard. Don't you understand this is a failed category? And that was the ethos at the time, was that it was a failed category. But Marketo was actually, we founded a company the same quarter that Twitter was founded, the same quarter that the iPhone was released. And that was our kind of insight, was that was yet another step function in the way screen time gets used, the way multi-device worlds get used. And we called that one right, and Doug, and his partners saw it when nobody else did, and they were, phenomenal Series A investors in the whole route.
All right,
yeah.
Awesome. We'll come back in just a minute. So over to Kevin. So I think probably everybody in the room knows Marketo and is pretty familiar with what the business is. I would guess that the room is much less familiar with Cision. So actually, can you just to set the baseline, can you talk about who Cision is as a company, what you do, and what GTCR saw when they put together all those different companies?
When Spencer Stewart called, I had no clue who Cision was either. I was like, who? Who is this? Very quickly, GTCR has acquired 6 different assets in 2.5 years, and all of them are basically, this whole conference, you've got paid media, advertising, that's this leg of the CMO stool. You got owned, right? The email and the webs and the mobile and all that. And there is this third leg of the CMO stool called communications, right? You got earned media, you got Marcom, you got classic PR, et cetera. And what these things are is they are all basically PR and Marcom, and they are rolled up under this entity called the Chief Communication Officer, who is different from the head advertiser, different from the head e-commerce person, different from the head owned, web and mobile person, but has a very material position. About 8 out of 10 chief communications officers report to the CMO. The other 2 actually report directly to the CEO. And who knew? They actually spend money on software. Not enough. We're going to change that. But basically, that's what it is. And this was kind of an interesting. These were a couple of the names like Vocus and Cision actually went public in the last wave. Got too big for their britches, burned too much, couldn't grow, went down. So this is that classic. I can buy assets that are pretty good assets, but relatively distressed. And then, obviously software margins are good. I don't need 5 data centers. I don't need 5 cost of goods sold. I don't need 5, a lot of this. So this is a very profitable thing. It's about a $650 million top line, and it takes $220 million down to the bottom line. So this is more classic. Hey, I can actually squeeze a bunch of costs as I bring entities together. The struggle here now is, right, okay, they want software top line growth, but maintenance of EBITDA, and it's like, no, that's going to be interesting too, Phil. My interesting is teaching them that you don't get to actually go chase SaaS growth and maintain the same EBITDA.
Yeah.
But with scale, right, there are opportunities to do so. So it's a very different approach, but it's the same recognition that Phil articulated that, boy, at some scale, these things actually can be profitable businesses. The category is growing quite nicely, and there is some really, really nice return here, which is why I think we're going to see a lot more private equity guys go jump in. These are two investment theses. I bet you we're going to see 5 or 6 more.
Yeah. So you actually had a great thing going, creating, running the Oracle Marketing Cloud with a big checkbook behind you to go do more deals.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit about Cision, what GTCR saw.
Yep.
What drew you to go?
I think it's pretty. How many times do you get to actually just go do Groundhog Day over again, but with no competition. Right, the paid and the owned folks have gone from it's a dead category to more budget, more money, more headcount, more IT calories, more spend in the history of the category, right? And that's happened in paid and in owned. And how do they do it? They basically did it by investing heavily in data, and they invested heavily in tech platforms to actually go execute that business transformation. They went from here to here, right? So we all remember when the banner ad was dead. Nope, more money spent on display advertising than ever, and they did it with data and tech. So the data and tech transformation has happened on the paid side, right? The data and the tech has happened on the owned side, and I was part of building, right, a huge one. But everything that I did at Oracle Marketing Cloud and my competitors at Salesforce, my competitors at Adobe, my competitors at IBM was also nothing but the paid and the owned side. The earned side needs a tech stack. It needs a marketing cloud for earned, just like we have marketing clouds for paid and owned. And it's a complete white space. So I am basically repeating history and doing exactly what we did at Oracle Marketing Cloud, but over here in the earned category, if that makes sense. And I don't have an Adobe or a Marketo or a Salesforce or an IBM or anybody else to actually go compete with. So that combination of saying, boy, that has to happen in earned, just like it happened in paid and owned. I can do it with a good set of assets, a very good PE with appetite for more M&A. And my competition is really an unsophisticated market versus a bunch of hungry other SaaS companies investing at growth levels. Seemed like a good idea. And 90 days in, it still seems like a good idea. I'm glad I made the move. Yep.
You just made an announcement around your earned.
I did.
And
2 weeks ago, that communication cloud
Yep.
that we just launched is literally the same thing that I did when I launched Oracle Marketing Cloud. Same premise. You don't have to buy 6 different point solutions anymore. With Oracle, it was Eloqua, Responsys, right, BlueKai, Datalogix. This is Vocus, Cision, Visible, PR Newswire. Buy one reference stack rather than a bunch of point solutions. Make it data-driven and measurable. Connect it back to the marketing clouds and Google and Facebook, and voila, the chief communication officer can actually be data-driven and tech-savvy the way the head paid guy and the head e-commerce guy and the head owned media guy are. So it's actually really simple. There's nothing smart about this. It's just repeat, right? We're using the same fire. The paid guys, the e-commerce guys, and the owned guys are all sitting in warm caves with a roaring fire eating cooked food, and the communication guys are in the cold cave eating raw food. And all we got to do is go take the fire from here to here. We don't even have to create anything new. So it's a compelling story, compelling opportunity.
God, if it's that easy, I may go back into CEO, Kevin. I don't know.
So if it's that easy.
The real answer, it's because I'm lazy, Brian.
So being a buyer for many years and having to integrate businesses, you came into a business that have a lot of integrations going on at the same time. So just curious, since it has been 2.5 years, but it's been kind of a rolling 2.5 years of these deals, where is the company in the integration of all these assets?
I will say one thing about Oracle. There's a lot of good things and a lot of challenging things about trying to buy 7 different companies and integrate them and make them one thing inside the construct that is Oracle. But one thing they do well is they know how to acquire well, and they know how to integrate well with a massive amount of resources. And I think my acquisitions were number 103 through 110, right? They already had 103 under their belt. Not so much over here. So the discipline around integration is so mission critical, and I would say that overall, this kind of roll-up is at a whole different stage of maturity, a whole different set of know-how, lack of processes, right? Lack of everything. So a much more embryonic approach and know-how around integration. So they're going to need to bring people in that have been through it before, that know what good integration looks like, because they just don't have the machine that an Oracle or an Adobe or an HP or a Microsoft would have around what you do after you write the check.
And distribution.
And distribution and the whole bit, all that. Yeah, exactly.
Great project.
And by the way, maintain the EBITDA. Did I mention that? Maintain the EBITDA margin while you're spending all that money in integration.
And so obviously there's a lot of work to do, and need to make sure you have that stable foundation that you can keep building on. But from your viewpoint, any further acquisitions out there for
I think so. I think we are in that and again, the parallels are remarkable. There was no magic quadrant on digital marketing hubs when me and Adobe got tussling, 4 years ago. Now it's just the way you buy, right? So there's a whole bunch of that kind of, I guess, category creation, right? I need to go teach the CCO how to buy tech, how to use tech, right? How to use a platform rather than a bunch of point solutions, how to make it strategic, how to measure it so that the CMO and the CFO actually value it, because PR has always been, or comms has always been, okay, who cares, right? It's not been measurable. So I have a couple years where I need to get my buyer to sophisticate up into what we've already built, because we're here and the buyer is here. So it's going to be more about finishing the job around the integration and the go-to-market and teaching a sales team how to sell a platform rather than a point solution. After we kind of get the market caught up with us a little bit, we were probably going to do another second round of M&A pretty aggressively, because what I'm doing is in the core communications function, which is big. It's there's about $3 billion in direct vendor spend. I only have 600, so I'm about, what am I? I'm a 20% share player. So, and we're going to create a lot of spend right above and beyond where it is right now. But we're going to do it for communications. And then earned media is a much bigger category. You've got employee amplification, you've got consumer influencers, you've got user-generated content, you've got ratings and reviews. And the real play here is to not just have a communication cloud, but an earned media cloud. So once we get the comms folks buying, and adopting real comms cloud technology, we'll widen it out into earned, and a lot of that will be via M&A. It will not be via organic growth.
All right, love to hear that. So I want to come back to Phil. So, you mentioned Marketo as a platform, but also mentioned, cutting costs, driving EBITDA, et cetera. Your views on Marketo as Vista using Marketo as a platform to do a broader roll-up strategy?
Well, I think it's a unique opportunity, because all you have to do is look at Illumiscape, right, to understand, or look at Marketo has 600 integrated technology partnerships with mostly smaller companies that plug in, and same is true of the Oracle Marketing Cloud and others. And so that's just, if you think about that through a customer's eyes, that is just a freaking mess, right? Trying to figure out which of those products to pick and how to choose and how to assemble a marketing stack. And people talk about building your marketing stack, but like marketers don't come to work in the morning wanting to build a marketing stack. They come to work in the morning wanting to market. And so I think there's a gigantic opportunity to start to see somebody with an anchor tenant like this and deep pockets like a Vista get very acquisitive around a platform like Marketo and look at the best ecosystem partners, look at the best other players, and start to assemble a much higher scale kind of platform that I think can be very interesting and can start to challenge the bigger players with their large, challenge an IBM, challenge an Adobe, challenge a Salesforce with sheer scale. Buying a bunch of companies is not the same as turning it into a single innovative whole and then unleashing a distribution organization on being able to sell it in a coherent way. And whereas an Oracle or another large company sort of for 20 years or 30 years mastered the art of how do you have overlay people in a sales organization and everything else, those are all cost items as you start to look at a smaller company like a Marketo, a $200 or $300 million a year company. And so I think the challenge is going to be, can that kind of an integration tear, or acquisition and integration tear, be translated into sustainable growth, or does it translate into value maintenance or value destruction even through inability to monetize the result? It's going to be, it's just going to be a fascinating show to watch, because I think it is going to change the pace and intensity of acquisition of smaller channel players, smaller analytic players, smaller predictive players, smaller players in this space that really do need to associate themselves with a larger platform.
Yep. Very good. So as Gail mentioned, you just left the business after running for 10 years. And I asked Phil as I saw him, I said, so are you nice and relaxed now? And he said, well, the events of this week, actually, I wouldn't call them relaxing. But anyway, so what's next for Phil, going forward?
Well, I've been building companies for 35 years in the Valley and burning candles at both ends. And I have put a stake in the ground that I'm not going to do anything operating again. So I've held my last staff meeting and my last QBR and given my last, my last at least, employee sales call. But I am just a creature of the Valley, of the entrepreneurial cycle. And I'm realizing that, the school of hard knocks and the school of wisdom from 35 years of building companies and seeing the cycles is pretty valuable. And I'm just loving working with anything from literally 2 people in an idea tech stage to some larger, more mature companies around scale up at each of the different levels of the organization. You know, watching in a Marketo, as we attempted to scale the business from 200 million to 300 million, a completely different set of problems than scaling from 5 million to 10 million or something like that. And so I think I bring a set of sort of insights into what organization, what revenue scale up, what business scale up looks like at many of those different phases of this life cycle. And I hope to, contribute as much of that wisdom back to 4 or 5 companies I might sit on the board of, and a few investments I might do here and there, and try to just, stay in the game, because I know this. I've been doing this digital marketing thing for, I don't know, 30 years. So I probably have more insight into this whole space just because I started doing it in 1988, and I feel like that's an asset that I want to leverage for 10 more years, just
Excellent.
operating. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be in demand. All right. Well, thank you both so much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tim.